Okay, there will be multiple videos for this assignment because there are a number of steps that are involved. The first thing to consider is that you read the instructions all the way through at least once, maybe a couple times before you start to follow these. First part of it's real simple, it's just a matter of typing. One of the things that you'll notice about a spreadsheet is that the columns are not wide enough. There's two ways to make a column wider. You can drag it and you can make it wide, but it's still not wide. And again, when I type a price in here, it overwrites it. So you can see that that's a problem. The second way to make a spreadsheet column or row the right height or width is to go between the letters or the numbers and double click that line. If I double click the line between A and B, it will automatically make it as wide as it needs to be to hold the data. So anyways, now we go through and we simply type in the data that is given in the instructions. Type in one data, you can hit the right arrow key, go to the next field, type in the next one, hit the right arrow, go to the next field, hit the down arrow key, type in these, hit the left arrow, type in these, hit the left arrow, type in this, hit the return key, and it will move you down automatically. Now the mileage cost is one that is not just entered. The mileage cost is computed. The mileage cost here is really a function of how many miles you drove times how much you get reimbursed for each mile. The basic formula for that starts with an equal sign. Every formula starts with the equal sign. And a spreadsheet, we do not use the numbers. We do not say 250 times 0.45. We always use the cell reference. We say equals B5 times J1. Okay? These are the cells that contain the values. And hit the return key, and that is the value. If you look at this up here at the top, you'll see the formula. If you double click a cell with the formula, it will color code and show you what cells are part of that. One of the things I mentioned in my instructions is that you have to make this an absolute amount. Look in chapter 3, they talk about absolute versus relative amount, or absolute and relative references, and what the difference is. To make a value or a cell location here absolute, you add the dollar sign in front of it. So if I want it to always be J1, I would say $J, $1. That makes both the row and the column absolute. And here's why you want to do that. Okay? Instead of having to retype the formula again and again and again, once you have the formula, you can right click, copy it, select the two cells where you want to paste it, and when you do this, make sure you point your mouse right in the middle of the cell. Don't point to one of the borders and then drag it, because different things will happen. To select two cells, just drag your mouse over them and then right click, paste, and you can see this automatically used the cell above it. Okay, we started out over here using B, and then this one uses C, and this one uses D. That's called a relative reference. As you move from B to C, it copies from B to C, and from C to D, it uses D. But J1 is always referenced. That's an absolute value. So let's go down here and finish up. License fees. We don't have a row for the license fee. To add a row, it's going to go between mileage cost and meals and entertainment. You will select that row, right click it, and say insert rows. Then in here, all you have to do is type in license fees. Hit the right arrow key and continue to input the numbers that I have given you in the instructions using your up and down arrow keys. I could have just as easily gone back over here and go from left to right every time, but it doesn't really matter. To be efficient, you can enter these in any direction you want as long as you hit the right numbers. I'm going to make a deliberate error right there. if I can show you something. Okay, so there's our basic values inputted. First thing you're going to want to do now is to save this. So click on the floppy disk. Well, you can't just click on the floppy disk because we already have a name. If this was a new unnamed spreadsheet, you could do that. So you have to say File, Save As, and like we have before, choose the right location. Go to your documents, go to your summer session, and then give it the correct name. Last name, underscore, first name, underscore. And one of the things you can do is if you have your information already here, you can click on this to pick up the name of it, and then you can just highlight and change the rest of it. And I believe it was staff expenses that I told you to call this. Yes. Okay. Again, make sure you know where it's at. Make sure you have the right name. You can make this either a spreadsheet or an ODS. It does not matter. Okay. Because we're using OpenOffice, I will go ahead and choose ODS. Notice that it automatically changes the extension. All right. Let's add our totals up. To add the total, we're going to use the sum function. Equal sum. And when you type that in, it gives you a little syntax clue. We have to put it in parentheses. And here we can say number 1, number 2, number 3. Or you can just drag your mouse over the range. You can highlight this range. Notice how it automatically puts the range in there. Okay. Let me do this again. Equal sum, left parentheses, highlight the range. And we need our right parentheses. And there we go. And we can now right click, copy, and paste this. Alright, for quarter 2, April, May, and June, I tell you to add $20. And you don't just break your calculator out and say, oh, 250 plus 20 is 270, and then type in 270. You will lose points for that. What you have to do is compute this. You have to say equals B5 plus 20. Okay? This is a spreadsheet, not a word processor. The idea here is that you learn how to let the program do the work for you. So we did that for us. And here's the advantage of that, is once I do that once, I can copy that, and I can now spread that out over April, May, and June. I can highlight this range of cells and say paste, and boom, it automatically replicates it. See, 220s, 20 bucks more than 200, 320s, 20 bucks more. And the reason for that is because of the relative reference. If I copy left or right, or if I copy up and down, it automatically does it. Now here's the main problem though, is in the mileage cost. For the mileage cost, you don't just add 20. If you go back over here and look at the formula, okay, you'll see that is a computed formula. So you have to actually copy that formula. You can then paste it over to here, and now you have the correct values. Same thing down here. You can copy this, paste it down here, and you have the right values. One of the things you're going to want to do right away, once you get some data in, is to make it look like the kind of data it represents. These are supposed to be dollar amounts, but you really can't tell that. So is this one up here. To format to look like dollar amounts, select the cells you want to format, and then click on the stack of coins, and that's called currency, and now that looks like 45 cents. We can do the same thing down here. We can select this entire range. Everything in here is going to be currency except for the mileage. I should not have selected the mileage row, so I really want to start below the mileage, okay? Because the mileage is actually the number of miles. It's not a dollar amount. The dollar amount is down here. So I select that, click the dollar sign, and now they look like the right amounts. Alright, to add up the first quarter, same thing, equals sum. We're going to sum these 3 months. So I select B, C, and D by dragging over them, add the right parentheses, hit the return key, and once again I can simply copy and paste this. Sometimes you can hold the control key down and paste in multiple regions, but not always. So all you can do is copy and paste. It does stay in the buffer, so you can right click here and say paste, right click here, say paste, drag your mouse over this range, right click, paste. If you sum non-currency, it'll keep the format as non-currency. If you sum currency, it'll keep the format as currency. Okay? So again, the idea is that you've read all the instructions. You see where I tell you to use the sum. You see where I tell you to make things absolute. And the other thing I tell you to do is to add a an average function. So here we have the quarter total. We need to insert a column here and say we know what the total expenditures for the month are. What is the average expenditure? So the same way we inserted a row for the license fee, you can right click on F and say insert column, and that is there. And we'll give this, we should probably relabel these. This is actually quarter one sum, and this is quarter one average. If you get the red arrow, that means the data in there is too wide for the column. So again, you can go back up between these two columns, either manually drag them over as wide as you want, or double click it and it'll be as wide as it needs to be. Same thing over here, but let's do one at a time. Oh, that's interesting. It's not lining up right. Sometimes there are a few. Because I typed it in the wrong spot. Look at that. I did not hit the return key when I was done. Quarter one average. All right. The average formula is similar to the sum formula. Equals average. And it tells you need a left and a right parentheses. And we're going to average the 3 months. We're not going to average the sum in there. Hit the return key, and there it is. Once again, we can simply copy, paste, copy, paste. Now over here, we can once we get this first row, over here we don't need to insert a row because there's really nothing there in the way. We can select this and simply copy it, go over here to the end of this quarter, paste it. Might have to make it a little bit wider. Okay, and as you can see, because of a relative reference, it used the correct range. And then save this. Now that we do have the correct name up here, you can just hit the floppy disk periodically. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to move the second quarter down below the first quarter. So you're going to select second quarter by selecting it with your mouse, dragging your mouse over it. You're going to say right click, cut. And then you're going to give yourself a couple of lines and right click, paste, so that January is underneath, right above April. We also need to have our labels over here. So we will copy these and start with the mileage at the put in the right cell there, paste, and that is like that. Next thing we want to do is to move these back over here. Eventually we want to be able to print, and we just want to be able to print this area here. We don't want to have to print too wide. We have actually aligned this to the right. That's why it lines up over here. So we need to take J and K, and we need to move it. The way you move it is by cutting it from one place and then pasting it in the other place. And the program is smart enough to know that we moved it, even though we made it absolute, and it will keep that in mind. The last thing we need to do here is to save this again, and time is up for this first set of instructions, so I will go to the next.